those of you who are old enough to remember, and we know who we are, that was Floydd Watkins, the Pink Bluesman. And guess what?
Hey, Stewart, what are you listening to?
Well, do you remember I was telling you a story about a character I met? His name was Floydd Watkins, and he was called the Pink Bluesman.
I do, yeah.
Well, by coincidence, I am now listening to a story about Floydd Watkins, and if you ever wanted to know why he was called the Pink Bluesman, this is his picture.
He really is the Pink Bluesman. I'd like to hear his story.
Well, his story really began.
It's back in the late 1940s when Floyd worked in his grandma's nightclub, the famous Cafe Society uptown, where all the major black acts of that time appeared. But it was the great bluesman, Muddy Rivers, who changed Floyd's life forever. Floyd was playing his guitar behind the club when out came the great bluesman himself. "What's that you playing there, boy?" "That's the blues, sir," replied Floyd innocently. "That ain't the blues. If you wants to play the blues, you gots to feel it. And you can't do that on 135th Street. You gots to go out there and live the blues. Because you see, the blues is honest, you can't fake it. And only when you personally feel the misery and play it through your music will it be the blues." Well, Floyd had this dream of becoming a real bluesman. So the 15-year-old black albino took to the road and headed south in his quest. He played wherever he found musicians, in small towns, back hollers, even lone cabins in the woods, eager to learn more about this sad music of the soul. Now, Floyd didn't become a star overnight, but fate did lend a hand with the appearance of two white men who caught his performance in a club about 60 miles outside of Atlanta. One turned out to be the owner of one of the largest talent agencies in the country, and the other was his public relations man. The minute they heard Floyd's music, they knew it was special, and when the public relations man realized that Floyd was a black albino, he remembered hearing an old Southern superstition that being in the presence of a black albino bluesman brings good luck. Taking that as a lucky omen, the talent agent signed Floyd to a long contract, and the public relations man dubbed Floyd the Pink Bluesman. One night, as the Pink Bluesman was taking a shortcut from New Orleans to Miami, in the middle of nowhere, he heard drumming, and his headlights picked up a man playing drums on the side of the road. The drummer stuck out his thumb to hitch a ride, and in one motion, Floyd brought his car to a screeching halt and the man jumped in. They rode along in silence until Floyd asked, "Which way you going?" The drummer just smiled and pointed straight ahead. "Well, how far you going?" This time the drummer just shrugged his shoulders. Feeling frustrated, Floyd blurted out, "Hey man, don't you talk?" And with that, the drummer said, "My name is Claude Larson III. My friends call me Knuckles. I don't usually speak. When you want to know what I have to say, all you have to do is listen. And it was lucky that you came along." And with that, Knuckles started beating out a rhythm on the dashboard, and Floyd listened for a while and smiled. He knew then that they were both traveling in the same direction to the same place, wherever that might be. Floyd and Knuckles traveled around playing clubs all over the country. Eventually, they returned to the Big Apple where the jazz scene was hot. They got to play with all the major cats of that time. They were having the time of their lives, and as Floyd would put it, music was my lady. All of Harlem opened up to the Pink Bluesman and Knuckles, and one night, as Floyd tells it, me and Knuckles stopped by the Baby Grand to confirm a gig with the owner. And there she was, the tiniest thing with the biggest voice I ever did hear singing, "I got a case of the blues over you." And before I knew it, I stood up and headed straight into her spotlight, looked into her eyes and whispered, "M'lady." After the show, the club owner joined Floyd and Knuckles, and Floyd asked to be introduced to Bessie. "She'll only be trouble for you," the club owner said, "'cause she's got a mama that watches over her like a hen over her chick." He then went on to tell Floyd about this little lady starting with her birth. It seems that Bessie Green was the tiniest baby born in Harlem General Hospital in the late 1940s. But it wasn't her size so much as her melodic way of crying that separated her from the other screaming infants in the maternity ward. By the time Bessie was 2, she was lead singer in the church choir. Her daddy died when she was still young, and the widow Green took Bessie with her to the studios of Red Note Records, where she cleaned to support them. Little Bessie loved to dance and sing along with the music she heard recorded at the studios. One day, a record producer spotted Bessie's antics and was so impressed with her harmony, he invited her to join the session. At age 10, Bessie dreamed of being a singer in a band. Widow Green, a very religious woman, didn't approve of the lifestyle of musicians, but she recognized Bessie's God-given gift, and under her watchful eye, she let her perform in nightclubs. But she wouldn't let Bessie stay to watch any of the adult acts. Shortly after Bessie turned 18, she got a call to perform at the Baby Grand. Her mama wasn't home, but Bessie hesitated for only a minute. She remembered her mama saying, "Honey, if you play the Baby Grand, it could lead to bigger and better things." So Bessie jumped in a cab and was escorted backstage. In the dressing room, sitting by herself, Bessie realized for the first time she was facing life on her own, even if only for a few hours. After the performance, Bessie was brought over to the table and introduced to Floyd and Knuckles. Floyd stood up, put out his hand and said, "Hi, I've never heard a voice like yours before," and invited her to join them for a drink. Bessie's instant response was, "Oh, no thank you, Mama wouldn't approve," but she did join him. And then Floyd told her the main reason he wanted to meet her. He wanted her to be the lead singer in the group he was forming. Amazed, she stammered, "I'm not sure, I gotta ask my mother." But before she could stop herself, she said, "Yes, I want to do it." Beaming, Floyd said, "I was lucky to catch your show tonight." "Oh no, it was lucky of me," she replied, and Knuckles beat out a rhythm on the table. The boys had convinced Bessie into joining them at a late-night jam session at Small's Paradise. 4 a.m., one by one the cats arrived, and there they were, the who's who of jazz. Bessie was blown away by what she saw and heard that night, and she was happy she said yes. The next morning, one of the cats admitted he was tired, and they called it a session. Bessie, Floyd, and Knuckles were on the street, adjusting their eyes to the daylight, when they heard the most melodious saxophone riff coming from an apartment across the street, and saw this 250-pound mama sitting on a stool, playing her instrument. It was Ruby. One cold and snowy night, a weather phenomenon in Los Angeles, baby Ruby was left in an alley behind the Black and Tan Club, the leading nightclub in the city. She was found by legendary musician Mississippi Minnie, who named her Ruby because of the little red bow in her hair, and from then on Ruby traveled the country with Mississippi Minnie and her boys. Throughout her childhood, Ruby suffered from terrible nightmares filled with visions of ghosts and skeletons and bats. One night, Ruby's screams woke up everyone in the boarding house. No one seemed to comfort her until a dapper gentleman appeared at her bedside. He put a small saxophone between her lips, and out came one long, glorious, tortured note, and Ruby fell into the sleep of angels. The gentleman dropped his card on the bed and said, "Have her look me up when she turns 18," and departed. Minnie picked up the card and read, "Chewy Gordon and the Symphony 5. Ruby never had those nightmares again, and from that moment on she played nothing but the saxophone day and night. On Ruby's 18th birthday, Minnie gave her the card and told her, "It's time, go see him." Ruby had grown up to be a big, attractive woman, and Chewy hired her on the spot, renaming his band Chewy Gordon and the Symphony 6, number 6 being Ruby. Ruby liked playing with the cats in the band. After all, Ruby was a young girl feeling her oats and traveling with Chewy and 5 of the coolest black cats in the country. At different times, she fell in love with every one of them and had a kid with each. And in each case, when the cat moved on, he left the child with Ruby. Ruby says that if she ever wrote her autobiography, this chapter would be called Trouble is a Dude. But she has no regrets. As she put it, "I got 6 children that love me, and that's 6 times more loving than a woman that got no one." While the youngest was still an infant, Ruby decided it was time to explore a new kind of music. So she packed up her brood and came to New York. She and the kids played their instruments and danced on the streets of Manhattan. They passed the hat to pay the rent for a tiny one-room apartment they got across the street from Small's Paradise. It was a rather warm morning and the street noises was keeping her baby up. Trying to soothe her crying child, Ruby played the sax and the other kids harmonized with her. Finally, she placed a toy saxophone in the baby's mouth, and the child blew one long, mournful note and fell asleep. Just then, there was a knocking at the window. She put her finger to her lips and raced to the door. "What's the matter with you? It's taken me 4 songs to put this child to sleep, and you almost woke her up." "I didn't mean to disturb you," said Floyd apologetically, "but I was so overtaken by the way you play your sax. By the way, can you also sing backup?" "Listen, sugar, I can diaper my baby and sing backup without missing a beat," quipped Ruby. Floyd laughingly introduced himself, Bessie, and Knuckles to Ruby, and Ruby became the 4th member of Floyd's group. This was the luckiest break Ruby had since coming to New York. Now that Floyd's group was official, they bought a pink bus so that the Pink Bluesman, the little lady with the big voice, the drummer who speaks without talking, and Big Mama Ruby, her sax and 6 kids could travel together and play their music all over the country. Floyd's group was plodding along, playing wherever they could, when one day Mama Green asked if they would perform at a big benefit her church was having. Of course the group agreed, and Floyd even wrote a special song for the occasion called "We've Got the Power." When they arrived for the benefit show, they were told that they would be the 4th act. They were also told that Noah Johnson, an executive with a record company, had contacted some headline black acts, and if they stopped by, they would go on first. The show went along as scheduled, but just before Floyd's group was about to go on, the celebrities arrived, and Floyd's group, all emotionally charged to go on stage, had to wait. Over the next 5 hours, 7 other acts went on before them. The tension was so thick in their dressing room you could cut it with a knife. Finally, Floyd's group was called to go on and close the show. "This is it," shouted Ruby, and the group headed for the stage. Bessie led the way, but just as she was about to step on the stage, she froze. Knuckles and Ruby walked right past her, not noticing anything wrong. Floyd, not quite watching where he was going, smacked right into her. "Come on, let's go," he urged, but Bessie didn't move. Floyd tried shaking her, but nothing changed. Not knowing what else to do, he leaned over and kissed her. It was only a few seconds, but for Bessie it seemed like forever. Floyd then looked in her eyes and said, "Don't worry. We're all a little scared, but we're all out there together and we'll be great." Well, Bessie did more than unfreeze. You might say she melted, and she went out there and gave the performance of her life. They opened with their new song, "We've Got the Power." Ruby started clapping and the audience joined in. Then one by one, the people were on their feet, dancing and singing along. When they finished their set, Floyd's group got a standing ovation and the crowd was shouting for "We Got the Power" again. And this time, the other headliners joined in. Onto the stage came the top names in rock, blues, jazz, ragtime, and gospel, all singing and playing in their own styles, yet harmonizing as if they were one. The audience left the benefit humming the song and feeling good. Immediately after the show, Noah Johnson went backstage and signed Floyd's group to a record contract. It looked like the group was headed for sure success. That evening, the group went to celebrate. At midnight, Ruby went home to her kids, and Knuckles passed out in the pink Cadillac, leaving Floyd and Bessie alone for the first time. Their eyes met, their hands touched, and they wandered off to the one-way inn where Floyd and Bessie made beautiful music of their own. The next morning, however, both Floyd and Bessie agreed that it would be better for the band as a group if they put their personal lusts aside, and after that, their night alone was never mentioned again. The song was recorded and released locally, and a DJ from a top black radio station played it on the air. Before long, it was #1 in Harlem. Floyd's agent arranged a concert at Randall's Island with Floyd's group as the stars, and the tickets were sold out within 6 hours. There were interviews in the press ready to be released, and they were scheduled to appear on a major TV variety show the Sunday before the concert. This could be their lucky break. It was still 3 weeks before the big concert, and Floyd and Knuckles continued jamming the nights away in different clubs with different musicians. One night, coming home from a jam session on Long Island, tired and high, they missed the exit to New York City. Suddenly, a cat darted across the car's path. To avoid hitting the cat, Floyd swerved the car, lost control, and hit a fire hydrant that broke off, cascading water into the air. From out of nowhere came the flashing lights of cars and cops with their guns drawn. Floyd knew they were in trouble when the first remark made by one of the cops was, "What's a couple of black boys doing in this town?" The cops searched Floyd and found a little bag of cocaine in his pocket. When they tried to handcuff him, one of Floyd's arms swung around and accidentally hit a cop in the face. The cop thought Floyd was trying to escape and began to brutally beat up on him. In an effort to help his friend, Knuckles jumped in. Floyd and Knuckles were subdued by the cops, and word got out to the press as to who they were. The next day, the news referred to the story as the incident at Richbury, Long Island. They stood trial in county criminal court on August 4th, 1973, found guilty by an all-white jury and sentenced to 25 years. As Floyd left the courtroom, Bessie, with tears rolling down her face, flung her arms around Floyd and held him close. All Floyd could say was, "Boy, did I screw up." The judge allowed them 30 days to get their affairs in order. As a result of all the bad publicity, their concert and television appearance was canceled, and the radio station stopped playing their record. All the news stories that were about to break didn't. It looked like the black albino bluesman had run out of luck. Then Floyd and Bessie did an extraordinary thing. They exchanged marriage vows on the construction site of the still unfinished church, the scene of their greatest triumph. The four of them believed in their music, and they knew We Got the Power was just the beginning. They vowed to do whatever it takes, whatever they're gonna have to do, that Floyd's group would be again. Floyd and Knuckles did 19 years of hard labor in one of the most miserable prisons in America, Sing Sing. Knuckles kept a secret diary which Floyd found accidentally. When Floyd read the contents, his pain and guilt was so great that he burnt it. The diary was destroyed with the exception of this page. Friday, June 5th. Dear Diary, another day in the can. Got a letter from Ruby. Mama Green died last week and Bessie is taking it mighty hard. Singing less, drinking more. Ruby keeps things going. She promises to straighten Bessie out by the time we get out of here. Floyd hasn't heard from Bessie and I'm afraid to tell him what's going on. I don't know what he'll do. Thursday, July 16th. Floyd plays his guitar all day long like a man driven. He looks at Bessie's picture and then he makes music. I never heard him make sounds like this before. It's the vow we all took that keeps him together. I keep telling him that the women are doing their part and we can't do less. They served 19 years when Floyd and Knuckles were given time off for good behavior. Knuckles got released 1 week earlier because his name came first alphabetically. On the train ride back to the city, Floyd reflected on his life and his meeting as a boy with bluesman Muddy Rivers. He remembered the words that Muddy said. The blues is honest. You can't fake it. And only when you personally feel misery and sorrow and express it through your music will your music be the blues and you'll be a real bluesman. Now, for the first time, Floyd understood these words completely. He was interrupted from his thoughts when the conductor shouted, Grand Central Station, everybody off. Ruby, Knuckles, and of course Bessie were waiting when Floyd got off the train. They had a lot of reconnecting to do. They celebrated for a week and then got down to business. At the first rehearsal, everyone was nervous. It had been 19 years since they all played together. They all shared the same fear. What if I can't play as good as the others? What if the magic's gone? The years had changed them. The band started with We Got the Power, but it didn't sound the same. At first, Floyd's heart sank. But as they continued to play, it sounded better and better, and their confidence returned. The magic was still there, even stronger. They were Floyd's group once again. When Floyd stopped playing, he looked at his group and he said, How lucky I am to have such good friends as tears fell from his eyes. You see, Floyd now realized his boyhood dream. From this point on, Floyd's group would be playing real blues, and Floyd would be a real bluesman.
Well, that just goes to show that playing music with a black albino musician really does bring good luck.